really?
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thank you all for coming on this terrible weather day. So once again, good morning, and on behalf of the Goshen Public Library and Historical Society, I'd like to welcome you to this last presentation of our spring series of lectures. I'm Bill Troy, and I have the pleasure today, I think it's a pleasure, of introducing Goshen's village historian and longtime member of the Friends, Mr. Ed Connor. Just before we get started, I need to cover a few things. This is part of my routine. I get paid extra to do this. The emergency exits there behind the curtains, the door you came in, of course, and the door over here on the side, which goes through to the outside. On either side of the hallway, just outside the door, are the bathrooms, clearly marked. I want to mention also our next book sale. We had a phenomenal result at the book sale a couple of weeks ago, and we're hoping for the same on Great American Weekends, July 5th and 6th. We'll be having another book sale. Let's see, the lecture series. So I mentioned today is the last one for the spring, and we will start again in the fall on September 13th, and I'll begin posting on Facebook and putting it in the newspaper and whatnot, so you're all aware of that. I wanted to also mention, by the way, the work that's being done on our history journal. I mentioned that a couple of times before. Don Aitchison is here. The history journals will be available out in the lobby. There's a donation that's asked for to support their effort, but those are moving along quite nicely. And lastly, my favorite part, donations. We have 2 large plastic jugs there, and we really appreciate your generous support so that we in turn can support all of the programs that the library runs. There are also membership forms, Friends membership forms on the table for anyone who would like to join up if you haven't already. Okay, so we welcome back Ed this morning for a discussion of Goshen's historic Church Park District. Ed will share a wealth of photographs, some of which were taken over 100 years ago, which will depict what the buildings of the time looked like, and then and what they look like now. He will also link the names of many of the residents of that time to these homes and buildings, and I will now turn it over to Mr. Ed.
Can you hear me? Oh, good. Great technology. Thank you all for coming and spending your Saturday morning here. Thank you to the Friends for setting up the refreshments in the back, and my IT guy, Bill Troy, who makes it all happen. And we are videoing this for people who can't attend today. And we're going to be talking about the Church Park Historic District. Is there anyone here who's never heard me speak before? Oh, really? Oh, great. Great. You all look familiar. So we're going to begin. Orange County has 14 National Registered Historic Districts in 7 villages. It also has 9 sites designated as National Historic Landmarks, 3 of which are West Point, that was formed in designated in 1960, Washington's headquarters in 1961, and Historic Track in Goshen in 1966. It goes all the way back. The 60s were not very kind to historic preservation in the United States. It was a period when we had what they called urban renewal. It's when Newburgh lost Water Street, Middletown lost James Street and Fulton Street, and Goshen had severe demolition on the square to build the bank that's there. So consequently, in the let's begin. In around 1974, Orange County, the Orange County historian Don Clark, in conjunction with the New York State Department of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, did a survey of Orange County, an archaeological survey and a architectural survey, which I was involved in from about 1974 to about 1977. The district was finally accepted by on the National Register in 1980. Before that, it went through a long review process at the state level in Albany, which we will get to further on. This is the William Pomeroy Foundation historic marker that's on the square, indicating that the historic district is there. And this was put up in 2018, which I applied for and got. This is, I do have a pointer here. This is the original historic district right here. This was created and accepted in 1980. And when we were doing the research in the 70s, one of the problems we had were getting people interested who owned private homes. Everyone was afraid that the state was going to come in and take over their homes, which was never true. So consequently, to get the district passed in this 1980 section, there are minimal of private homes. Later on, in 2003, a residential district was added, which included South Church Street, South Street, part of Green Street, part of Phillips Place. And this was accepted, as I said, in 2003, and this is almost all residential. What Goshen doesn't have is any kind of zoning regulations that are specific to the Church Park Historic District. The Village of Goshen created an overlay district, which is, whoops, sorry, wrong button. Sorry, I'm getting used to the technology here. An overlay district, which is called the Architectural Design District, which begins at Sarah Wills Trail, goes all the way down Main Street, all the way up West Main Street here, and all the way down to Clowes Avenue on both sides of Greenwich Avenue, or Greenwich Avenue if you prefer. And this also included houses, especially at the end of Upper Main Street, because a lot of those houses weren't included in the Church Park Historic District. The Church Park Historic District stops at Maplewood, doesn't go any further. And that was because in the 70s, it was easier to get the district accepted than it was to have the homeowners protesting that they didn't want to be in it. So, this is a stepping stone. This is Dr. Dennis's stepping stone, which I later found out, this is by Donovan's Funeral Home. I found out that Dr. Dennis lived there. He was one of the founding doctors for the first Goshen Hospital on West Main Street, which was located where Ice Caps is now. Is everyone familiar where that building is? Okay. And but Dr. Dennis did live in the Donovan Funeral Home. But there are elements to a historic district besides buildings. Stepping stones, hitching posts, period lighting, and flagstones. These were flagstones that were removed from the historic district on South Church Street a couple of years ago. And obviously, by the way they packaged them up and shipped them out of Goshen, someone sees some value in them. If you ever get to Milford, Pennsylvania, they have a great sidewalk society there, and they do fix their slate sidewalks, and they put in excellent repros cement ones that are stamped to look like slate sidewalks. The sidewalks in the village really need attention, by the way. I can editorialize of that. This is probably the oldest illustration we have of the Harriman Square. This is the square. This is South Church Street. This is what became Main Street. This is St. James Church, which was the first church on the site, a wooden church. This was the Ladies' Seminary, which was in the park. And this was the second Presbyterian church, the 1810 church, which was later moved to North Church Street. And this was the second courthouse right here. And this was probably the Washington Hotel in the back here. And these were the houses that were along what was at the time Main Street ran this way. Park Place was part of Main Street. None of these buildings exist anymore. None of them. Probably maybe one of these houses here that are on Kelsey Lane now is one of these houses. But as far as none of these, they were all wood, and they just didn't make it. In 1841, when the train came to Goshen, this part of Main Street, this became Main Street. They connected the square up to the Main Street by the Orange Blossoms Monument. And here's an early photograph of the square. And you can see that the residential element, the residential element here along Park Place. And this is the 1855 bandstand, the first water trough for the horses here with a light on top of it. And then you can see this is where West Main Street was connected through. It's kind of unfortunate now, I think, just from doing this program, that the name Church Park Historic, probably today it would have been better to call it the Village Historic District, because there's such confusion as to, when you say Church Park, people think it's just the Church Park. It goes well beyond that. This is another element, and we're very blessed to this in the village. Monuments are included in the historic district. All the monuments are. This is the, This is the 1911 Harriman Fountain. This is the Orange Blossoms Mountain in the background. And these are all the cottonwood trees that we used to have. And especially this time of year, the square would have been all white. The fountain was put in 1911 after Edward Harriman died in 1909. And Mrs. Harriman went on a spending spree. I have not read anything to indicate that Edward had any influence on spending the money that she spent. So I'm assuming I give her all the credit for being so generous to Goshen. This is the dedication of the fountain, and the reason I included this, let me get up on my notes here. This was February 25th, 1911. In the middle of winter, they did this, which I find very strange. This is Mrs. Harriman right there. And supposedly she was picked up at the train station in this car, driven down to the square, never got out of the car. The hay was put down because the road was so muddy. And I have another picture that shows, which I didn't include today for the sake of time, the size of this crowd filled the whole square, all the way around. It was quite an event. But the reason I included this is to show the houses that were along the park. And this was these two, and one of these is the Wilcox Livery Stable. It kind of gets blurry back in here. This is Webster Avenue, which at the time was Greenwich Avenue, which I've just been told it was also Main Street. But I'm waiting for that to be proven. I need some documentation there. And this is what was known as the Van Vliet building here. This building with the Flatiron added on later. This is the park, and this was the fountain was built in 1886, and it lasted until 1917 when the Everett Memorial was put in. And this is where supposedly the alligators lived. And here are the alligators. Now,
Imagine.
the alligator, this is what today, this postcard, and if you actually get a copy of the postcard, you can really see it. This is what we would call a Photoshop postcard. Okay? Robert Hawk, who was the mayor, went to Florida and brought the alligators back. I imagine they were probably about this big, maybe 18 inches long, because he kept them in a tank. There's no way he kept these alligators alive in a tank in a basement in a hotel. This was an attempt by the postcard company to sell postcards. And this is not the only postcard in Goshen that was done that way. Because they would, this was to get tourists to come to Goshen to see alligators. But when they got here, they did not see this. This is the Everett Memorial. This was built, installed in 1917. Charles Everett and his sister gave money for the construction of this, and also for the building of the first Goshen Library in 1918 on Main Street, which we'll get to. This is looking down Main Street, the Orange Blossoms Monument. This is the Van Vliet building. Now the Van Vliets they sold furniture and they were undertakers, which was not unusual, I guess, in those days. But you could probably walk around the showroom and get a casket out. And this building, let's see, I think I have one here without, there it is. This is the building in its prime before the Flatiron was put on the left there. And in later days, it became like the evening news office was in here, the Newburgh Evening newspaper was in here, their Piggott's vegetable market was in here. The building was used, but it was in rough shape. And this was the building that replaced it, another Flatiron building built by Mr. Meinwald and Mr. Quattrini here. Had something to do with it. Did you put that Christmas tree up there on the top?
Yes.
Somehow I kind of knew that. And this was built how many years ago, right?
89.
1989. Okay, there we go. This is a picture of the square. The parade is coming, which is really unusual, I think, coming down Webster Avenue over here. But the reason I included it is there's an automobile. One automobile. Actually, two automobiles, there and there. And the rest people are still in horse and buggies. And I assume this is, well, we know it's after 1911. But then this happened. And this is a World War I military parade coming down Main Street. And there's not a horse and buggy in the picture. So within 5 years, horses were obliterated as a transportation source. I love this. This is a guy filming up here on the roof. Again, here's all the houses, the residential element of the square. This is the Jackson house over here, which we're going to get to in a minute. And then this is the first Goshen diner. And this diner was built in Elizabeth, New Jersey, and it was built by the Jerry O'Mahony Diner Company. And it was originally located in Hudson, New York. And Ed Gaynor and his brother John brought it to Goshen and plunked it down on the front lawn. Oh, sorry. Plunked it down on the front lawn of the house. This is before zoning, I guess. And
I'll say.
Did I say Ed and John Gaynor? Okay. And the house, it was eventually demolished on the site and replaced with this diner, which is run by Mr. and Mrs. Whedon, and this is their son Spady in his Red Sox uniform. And I'm old enough to remember going in there. So, yeah. And this ran in the same spot, parallel to Main Street, on the same site. And here it is later. This is when it became Size Diner, which was actually originally an aluminum diner, your traditional. And then they put this. This was a. Sorry, I'm having trouble with the finger. They put this Cedar Shakes roof on it. This is Dewey Bankers, which was the Wilcox Garage until 1922. And during the 30s, Dewey Banker and Sheenan, it was known as Banker and Sheenan, and then Dewey Banker ran the garage for years. And then Larry Meinwald and Mr. Petrini converted this to an office complex, which is what we know today. And this is the Wilcox Garage with houses on both sides. Here's the house where they pumped the diner down on the front lawn, and then this house. Which is, if you read zoning today, this is what they strive for, is commercial and residential mixed, because you have people walking around buying things and they live there. This is the old Minnesink Cataract Firehouse. This was the originally the Bishop's family lived here for years, and then it became the Jonas family house. Mendel Jonas owned a clothing store on West Main Street. His grandson was Harold Jonas, if anybody remembers Harold.
I remember that house with the jeans.
And Jeannie, his wife. And this was a, let's see, do I have anything on this house? And let's see here.
Right next to it?
This is, yeah.
That was Tosk and Shertock lived there.
Okay. This is the original firehouse on the site. This was in, this photo was taken in 1864. This is, This is Charles Elliott, the fire chief. And this is, who we'll get to later, Charles Jackson and his son right here. And we'll get to that in a minute. And this was a real staged photograph because there's guys up here in the windows. Bring a camera and people will pose. This is the sort of the heart of the historic district. The fire tower was built in the original fire tower, let's see. That was built in 1879. And this housed the original, it had a bell, and then they used to use the inside for drying of the hoses, or they would throw the hoses over the side and let the hoses hang and dry. And this is the 1841 courthouse with its original cupola on it, which is gone with a replacement. That we have today. This is an early county plan for their government center. And I'm not sure of the date. I have a feeling this was like the 1950s this was proposed. They called for the demolition of everything from the 1841 courthouse down to the square. And I think the only thing that stopped it really was they didn't plan for parking. So it, and the fact that I don't think Goshen was receptive to the idea of tearing down their main street. What we're going to do here, I should have explained in the beginning. We're going up the left side of Main Street, okay, which would be the north side, I guess, and we'll turn around and come back. When we get up to Maplewood, we'll turn around and come back down the other side of Main Street, okay? I didn't jump it back and forth across the street. Here's the 1841 courthouse that was designed by Mr. Niven, and with the jail behind it. This was the County Jail, right here. And it was Thornton Niven. He was born in 1806 and died in 1875. The interior was modeled with the tin that's still there in 1895. And this building by itself is on the National Register of Historic Places. So, I'm not sure what year it was put on. The post office, by the way, is also on the National Register, if anybody didn't know that. And I think the reason it's on the National Register is because of the mural inside. The post office was built in 1936. This is the Gale Westcott family home, and this was built in 1743, and it lasted until 1884 when the Methodists tore it down to build their brick church that's on the site today. It's very similar to the St. James Rectory, and it also has, which if you've seen me speak before, I call this a Goshen fence. This style fence was on a number of houses in the village, and whoever built this fence was probably making a living doing it. The difference between this house and the rectory is this addition in the back here. The rectory doesn't have that, and the slope of the slope of the porch is different here. This is the Methodist church that was built on the site. I should mention that the Gale Westcott House was where they settled the New Jersey boundary dispute. It was sort of used as a community center, especially when Gale owned it. And it was a neighborhood hangout. This is the Orange Blossoms Monument. Here's the Orange Blossoms Monument. The monument was dedicated on Thursday, September 5th in 1907. It's dedicated to the veterans of the Civil War, 124th Regiment, known as the Orange Blossoms. And the monument weighs 19 tons. I don't know how they figured that out. The soldier, the standard bearer, was designed by Theo Alice Ruggles Kitson. The soldier is 18 feet in height, and the pedestal is 14 feet high. And Congressman Bradley Walden gave the monument to the people of Orange County. And this is Theo Alice Ruggles Kitson. She married her mentor, Henry Kitson, who was quite older than her, but he took her to France where she studied and became very successful. She did a number of Civil War sculptures and reliefs at the Battle of Vicksburg site. And if you go online, you can see other sculptures that she did. They eventually divorced, which I found kind of sad. They still stayed friends. They worked together, but they divorced. This is bringing the monument through the square from the train station. This is the base of the monument right here. And I love how everybody just stops and poses. It's like the camera was a big thing. All these buildings in the back are gone. This was the store, which is McShane's. Jack McShane was the last owner. He had a number of grocery stores around the corner here. This is Greenwich Avenue over here. But all this was demolished to the bank. I didn't count how many mules are there. Looked like it took them a while. This is the parade they had for the veterans. This is Old Howells here. This is Craft 47 over here. And if you notice, a lot of they're carrying guns. They're carrying rifles here. If you look really closely, it's not a very clear picture. But and then here's where they got to the monument, the dedication of the monument. And then this is the veterans. Now, I'm not sure if this picture was taken the day of the dedication or if this is a later reunion picture. One of the things I noticed is the condition of the flag here. This must have been a flag that was used during the war, and they kept it, because it looks rather tattered. But it's one of the great things with computers is you can go and focus on each guy's face, and, you know, very interesting. Here's a guy with a rifle right here. Holding a rifle. Or it could be a cane. This is the Orange Inn. The Orange Inn stands on the site of the first courthouse in 1938. This is the balcony, which didn't last. This was Barney Clark's. This was a restaurant and a oyster bar, and he used to make a concoction he called Mountain Dew. From what I've read, it was not, we'd probably call it a seedy place, I guess, today. It wasn't, but he made a living there.
Yeah, isn't that where the road is now?
Yes. This Barney Clark's was demolished to make way when the library bought the property. They straightened Hill Street. Hill Street used to have a loop in it. Here's this is after 1911, after the library was built in 1918. Excuse me. You can see that the library is there. These were private residences at the time. These were what we would call today townhouses, and there were businesses in some of them over the years. And then this is definitely after 1918 because there's the library. But these townhouses, let me see. We'll get to that in a minute. Well, the balcony's gone, and this is the recent renovation of the Orange Inn. It's probably safe to say that there's not much left there that's historic. As you can tell, they even redid the foundation, I was told. And they put another floor on top of it. This is the old Goshen Library in 1918. After Hill Street was straightened, there were two houses on this site. One was a brick building that was a residence and jewelry store owned by Daniel Warden, and he moved to West Main Street in the building that is now the nail salon, which used to be Goshen Hardware, and before that was the original Grand Union in Goshen. And this house was used, the house that was on this site was also used as the post office. The second house was a drugstore owned by Horace Elliott, who, and then later by the mayor, Fred Strack. Horace Elliott moved to West Main Street, and he was a druggist, and he was in the Dykeman drugstore, which was in the building that used to be Maureen Mulaney's, that's now vacant. Okay, and then Barney Clark's was right. Barney Clark's was actually right where the street is. And then next door to that is the Scheidel House, which was the home of the Knight family. Mary Wallace was Mrs. Knight. And then in recent years it was Merrill Scheidel's, and it's been a law office building for a number of years now. Great brick building. And next we have the Gail Aitchison House, which was built in 1790. It was originally the home of Cole Gale, who died in 1822, and he was a trustee of the Farmers Hall Academy That was a school on Webster Avenue. And in 1796, it was sold to by John Gale to John Johnson. And then in 1850, George Greer lived here before he built his house on South Street. And one of the interesting features of the house is that on one end it has a gambrel roof, and then this end has a peak roof. So I assume that this portion here was an addition at some point. It was also owned by the Cutterback family, and in the Aitchison era, it was the clothes horse was here, and you could see the clothes in the window. So this is when Mr. Aitchison lived here. Where is he?
Here he is.
There he is. You want to add anything about it?
We always had 6 or 8 inches of water in the basement.
That's not unusual in the village. And then next door, we have the music hall. The music hall was built in 1889 for the use of the Goshen Vocal Society. It also served as an auditorium for musical and dramatic performances. And in the 1930s and 40s, it was used for New Year's Eve dances in the village. And this photo was taken in 1966. Looks pretty good shape, though. And this is the Main Street School, which was built in 1911, 1912. It's the second high school. The first high school was in the back here on Webster Avenue. And 2 houses in the village were built from bricks that were left over from the building of this. One's on St. John Street, and the other's on Murray Avenue. So if you're riding around the village and you see yellow brick houses, this is where the bricks came from.
And I live in the red brick.
You live in the red brick?
Red brick on Murray, which was Bill Altman's house. He and his wife lived there. He built it for himself, and my husband once said, there's at least 5 different kinds of brick in the house.
They didn't throw anything out in the old days. And then this, I included this because I just thought it was so unusual. I don't know where I got this from. It's 4 buses parked in front of the Main Street School. Probably about the 1950s, I'd say, I guess. Early 40s, late 40s maybe?
Yeah, because in the 60s, they started pulling down Erie Street, and they pulled right into the side.
Well, I think this is a staged photo. Many of these were brand new buses that they were showing off. Because they all look about the same. So. This is the Wilmot Thompson stable that was on the site of the Main Street School, which was later moved across the street on Erie Street and became a private residence. Yulin beat this was a record of the Horace Yulin set, who was stabled here. Yulin's buried at the track. If you go to the historic track, there's a gravestone for him there. And then next door, Mr. Minchin had a house that he was known for serving apple whiskey, which I assume was to the left of this building. This is an aerial shot. This is a detail of the aerial shot of the village. It's not perfect, but it gives you, it does show you, this is the stable. That was originally here, they moved it over here. This was the Fitzgerald house. The Margaret Gleacy lived here, which I have a picture of in a minute. What's interesting here is, I believe the Inner Pines is already gone in this picture. So I've been trying to figure out when this was actually taken. This is this house on the corner is where the Rhinebeck Bank is, which I'll show you in a minute. What's interesting here is this is the Goshen Library when it had a lawn in the backyard. This is the lawn. And here's the original high school, the Red Brick building, which I believe the Red Brick School was torn down in 1962.
Yes.
So this predates 1962, but that doesn't explain why the mansion's not there. So I haven't quite figured out what was going on here.
There's one house there.
Whoops, sorry, heavy thumb. This is the, on the left was the Fitzgerald house. This was Mrs. Gleasy's house. Mrs. Gleasy owned Robinson's stationery store on West Main Street, where she passed away. And these were used by the county for a few years before the government center was finished as office space. This is what Erie Street's right here on the left. And then this is the Paul Rudolph building. This building was in the original application to Albany to be in the historic district, and Albany pulled it out. And that's why on the map I showed you, there's from here on, it bounces across the district, goes across the street to Maplewood. Well, I don't know what the reasoning was for not including this. They didn't, what I've read, it never really explained why they rejected it. But it doesn't have to be historic. It has to be architecturally significant, which I think this is. Yeah. But if you had, one of the things, the requirements of the district were the properties have to be contiguous. You can't have gaps. So back then, we would call them, if you had a newer house, it was called an intrusion in the district. I think nowadays they have politer language for it. But back in the 70s, we would call it an intrusion. But this was in the original application. And, whoops, sorry. This is the Inner Pines that was on the site of the government center, which definitely would have been in the historic district had it not been demolished to make way for the government center. And here's the Inner Pines in winter. It was built by George Wickham in 1816, and it was bought by Robert Goodell, who was president of the Erie Railroad from about 1864 to 1866, just in the middle of the Civil War. And after a divorce and a scandal, he left Goshen, and the house sat empty for 18 years until it was eventually bought by Frederick Seward, who made it the sanitarium, and it was demolished in 1964. And one of his most famous patients was Anna Dickinson, a nationally known orator and lecturer. And this is Robert Burdell. And I recently acquired this photo from an Erie Railroad buff. And I'm sure this was taken, is there anybody here who doesn't know the story of Robert Burdell? And Robert Burdell was married to Harriet. He was married to Harriet. Across the street, her sister was married, Gertrude, was married to Wisner Murray, who lived in Maplewood. Mr. Burdell had an affair, quite a few affairs, I guess. He must have looked, he might have had hair when that occurred. I think this is an older photograph. Anyway, Harriet sued him for divorce, and it got really nasty, and Robert Burdell accused his wife of having an affair with Windsor Murray. And one night at the railroad station, when Mr. Burdell was returning from Manhattan, Wisner and his brother met them at the train station and began to, Wisner started horsewhipping him, and he was basically accusing him of slandering the family in public. And so Robert Burdell took out a gun and shot Wisner Murray in the head. And Wisner lasted about a week and then passed away. And that's when Burdell's troubles really started, because all the financial debt he had accrued came home to roost, and he wound up in severe financial straits. And plus, the lawsuits went on for 2 decades. He passed away, I think, in 1890. Let's see, what year did he die? I don't think I have the date. I think it was like 1897 he died, somewhere in there. He lived a long time, but it wasn't pleasant. But he never came back to Goshen. And he was acquitted by the jury, claiming self-defense. But it was quite a scandal at the time. This is where the historic district ends. This is Maplewood. This is the home of the Murray family. With let's see here. Let me go back. This is the Pines house in the back. We'll get to that in a second. This was built in 1815 as a bank. Mr. Murray came and worked his way up in the hierarchy of the bank and eventually became president. The bank eventually moved down to next to where the pharmacy restaurant is today, the bank next door to that. That's where they moved. And then this became the Murray homestead. This is the Pines. Now the Pines, this was originally an inn. The original inn was this middle section here. And William Wickham bought the Pines in 1790 and converted it to a residence. And it eventually became the home of Henry and Susan Randall Bacon, who was a congressman. Susan Randall was the daughter of the Speaker of the House of Representatives in Washington, and Henry brought her back to Goshen, and she became instrumental in founding the first hospital on West Main Street, where Ice Caps is, what we talked about before. And then Henry died in 1915, and the house burnt down in 1916. They did manage to save some furniture, but it was quite a house. This definitely would have been in the historic district had it still been standing. But this is the last house in the district on Main Street is Maplewood. This was replaced in 1926 by a man named Dwight Hall. Later became the Lippincott House, still standing today, but it's not in the historic district. Probably one of the greatest shots of Maplewood, I think. One of the things I love is the tree growing out of the porch. The tree. They made a hole in the porch for the tree to grow. This is the Stagecoach Inn that we know as the Stagecoach Inn. It was originally Anthony Dobbins Stagecoach Inn. He bought the property in 10 acres in 1791 from Samuel Gale. And in 1801, by 1801 he would open an inn. John Hurd inherited the house. He was a nephew of Mr. Dobbins' wife. And in the 20th century, it was owned by the Wilder family and the Hickok family. The current owners have made it an inn again, but one of the things they've done within the historic district is they've subdivided the grounds of the building. So there's, I think, 4 or 5 building lots here that can have houses built on them. So things happen within the historic district that probably shouldn't. And then this is the Ackerman house. Mr. Ackerman was a builder, an architect. He, Cornelius, they had great names back then. He also built the house, the Finan House on South Street, and the Presbyterian, what was the Presbyterian manse that's on the corner of Park Way and South Church Street. And then he also built most of the houses along Orange Avenue. It was basically an Ackerman development. And this is the Hartford House. This was built by Cornelius Ackerman. This is the site of the Rhinebeck Bank. And Hartford used to bottle mineral water. And this is the building that they did it in right here. And if you're a bottle collector, you might have come across the Hartford bottle. There's still some around. You look on eBay, you can get one once in a while. These are guys hanging out in front of the Main Street School in winter. This is Orange Avenue back there. This is the demolition of the of the Hartford House. Make way for the bank. There's the bank. This is probably, I think probably the oldest photo I have anyway, of the Harness Racing Museum in the Hall of Fame. If you notice, let's see here, J. Howard Ford was a horse breeder. He owned what was the Backman Estate on Stony Ford Road. The stables here were built in 1912, and after Ford's death, they remained vacant until William King came to Goshen around 1926 and bought the stables and named them Good Times Stables. And in 1951, the building became the Hall of Fame of the Trotter, and there were 2 houses. Actually, there were more houses. To the corner, there were probably about 5 houses I've read. But this one, whoops, sorry, this was Fern and Blanche Potter's house. And this is now the lawn of the Hall of Fame. This is Griffith Realties. What we know, that this was a chair-making business owned by Benjamin Calvin Gardner. The building was supposedly has seen a lot of alterations and reportedly had a porch on it, which I can't quite figure out how to support because the door is ground level, but supposedly it had a porch on it. And this building and this building, which are still standing, are the only 2 buildings on that side of West Main Street that survived the fire of 1843, which started down at the further entrance, the main entrance to Historic Tract. The whole block burnt down. These 2 buildings survived the fire. This is what is known as the Smith House, which there's the historic marker I had put up a few years ago. The Smith House was owned by Hiram Smith. It was previously the site of the Mansion House Hotel, and before that it was known as Dr. Evans Stagecoach Inn. That building was destroyed by the fire in 1843. But the story is that Smith's daughter was married to General Rollins, and his daughter was named Emily Smith, and she was from Goshen. And she met General Rollins on a trip to Illinois, and I guess love struck up a relationship, and they got married. And General Rollins was a close friend and confidant of President Ulysses S. Grant and served as his Secretary of War. And Emily and John had 3 children, 2 of whom survived. And they were married. They were only married from 1855 to 1861, when Emily died of tuberculosis. And then Rollins remarried, but then he died at age 38 in 1869. And President Grant visited the children here in 1873. And the interesting thing is that the President Grant's papers are at the University of Mississippi, at the Mississippi State University, in the Mitchell Memorial Library. And when I spoke to the man, the curator there a few years ago, he had no record of Ulysses S. Grant ever being in Goshen. Ulysses S. Grant, according to the Independent Republican and the Middletown paper, visited Goshen a number of times because he was very friendly with Charles Backman, who owned a breeding farm on Stony Ford Road. And President Grant had a summer home in New Jersey, and he would sneak away from the paparazzi and come to Goshen. So it was never recorded. Actually, the curator told me he kept insisting that Grant was signing bills in Washington on the days he was supposed to be here in Goshen. But the only documentation that exists that he was ever here was basically the Independent Republican reporting his coming here. The other thing I could never find, on the side of the house, it says that Grant watched races from here. I've never seen anything written, I don't know where that story came from, but from what I gathered, the one piece I did read, he would stop here on his way to the train station and just have a short visit with the girls and then leave. The idea that he stayed here, I could not ever find that documented. One of the things I also find strange was that General Rollins remarried, and he also died of tuberculosis. But President Grant became the ward of the children. Why his second wife didn't take the children, or why they came to Goshen and lived at their grandparents' house, isn't really ever explained in anything I've ever read. But this is where the fire of 1843 stopped, right here. And then from here down, most everything, I think about 3 buildings are actually wood. The rest of them are all brick. Because after the fire, they tended to build with brick. There's the historic marker. June 25th, 1873. There's President Grant, probably what he looked like when he came to visit Goshen. Supposedly he smoked his last cigar here in Goshen at the Blackman Estate. There's the Blackman Estate. It's still there. If you go down Stony, if you turn at Noble Roasters, make a left, and this house is right on the right. You can see across the street here where there were obviously fields. Supposedly this farm was 700 acres. So it was he owned most of Stony Ford Road. And his stables are still there. They're on this side of the house. If you could take a ride down there, you can still see them. The stables are now a private residence. This is General Rollins. What's interesting is he was very friendly with President Grant, but President Grant didn't mention him in his memoirs at all. Didn't get involved in any mention of him at all, which was never explained either. This is Emily Smith from Goshen. And then this is a building that was next to the Smith House. This is the Smith House here, and this is the tall red brick apartment building that's still there. This was the Howell and Wilkin law offices. This was Mr. Howell's law office. This was Mr. Wilkin's law office. And one of these is Mr. Howell, and one of these is Mr. Wilkin. And this definitely would have been in the historic district had it survived. This is a building. This is sorry. This was supposedly the townhouse of Professor David Towle, T-O-W-L-E, Towle, I guess you pronounce that. Who was he ran the Young Ladies Institute, which is a site where the Goshen Inn is today. I've never been in that house. This is probably the 2 only wood structures on this side of the street. This building was, I'll show you. This was the rest home. That was that. This is what it looks like today. They obviously enclosed the porch. This was owned by the Elston family around 1875. But what happened was in those days, people would depend on the railroad to come to the horse races. So people stayed overnight, and anybody that had a room to rent, rented. Some people rented their whole house. This is a pretty contemporary photograph of Lawyers Row. And there were all businesses along here. This was the central business district before 1841. And there was a cobbler shop, a bakery, and a post office. And these buildings that were here were destroyed in the fire of 1843 that also took all the early town documents that were kept by the village clerk, whose office was above the cobbler shop. The cobbler shop was at the entrance to the track, which we'll get to in a minute. And most of these today are still law offices. This is where the cobbler shop was, here on the end. And this is where the fire supposedly started. And this building became known as, originally it was owned by Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Kitchell. And then in the basement, Kate Schartz, who was also a Goshen woman, ran a restaurant called the Subway. And these two buildings were joined in the basement. And Kate Schartz was very active in the track, and she was friends with the trainers, the owners, and the track personnel that frequented the restaurant that was there. And she also started, there she is. And she lived till like 1936, I believe. She really missed the height of like when the Hamiltonian was here, which is kind of sad. She probably would have loved it. Her daughter became the first official Goshen historian, Elizabeth Schartz.
Oh,
That's her mom. And she was born in one of the houses that was on the grounds of the Trotting Horse Museum. That got demolished. Here's the this is an original New York historic marker we still have. It was put up by the State Education Department in 1950. This is at the entrance to the historic track. As I was looking at this, I was wondering who was the first person to use that term cradle of the trotter. Where that came from. I haven't ever read anything about it. Hamiltonian lived from 1849 to 1876, and this is one of the few original signs I think we have left. There was one in front of the old Goshen Hospital on Greenwich Avenue that got hit by a car and stolen, and that never was recovered. It's probably sitting in someone's garage somewhere. This is the monument to the historic track. If you go in that entrance there, it's on the right, designating this as a national landmark in 1966. And this sign says, "Historic track has been designated a registered National Historic Landmark under the provisions of the Historic Sites Act of August 21st, 1935. The site possesses exceptional value in commemorating or illustrating the history of the United States by the U.S. Department of the Interior and National Park Service, 1966. And then, this is the entrance to the track. In 1854, Nathaniel Van Sickle bought Parkway Farm on Parkway. There's a house, the big white house that's being constructed there. That was Parkway Farm. There used to be a big barn there along Parkway. And Van Sickle leased the farm to a John Minchin, who built the track and operated it for a number of years. The track was only a third of a mile and was parallel to Orange Avenue. There's a map that exists that shows the different configurations of the track over the years. Historic Track wasn't the first racetrack in Goshen. It's the only one that survived, which makes it the oldest operating track. There was a track on 17 known as the Waters Track. There was a track on Golden Hill Avenue. And there was a track on Green Street known as Fiddler's Green. All of those were out of use by the time the historic track started around 1833. And then the track, in 1862, the Agricultural Society leased the track from Van Sickle for 10 years, and they started erecting stables, fences, and horse stalls. And then in 1884, Dr. Pooler, who bought Parkway Farm, sold the track to Joe Coates, who Coates had a car building business. He started out building horse sulkies in Goshen, and he rebuilt the track and made a career of redoing racetracks, including what became Good Time Park, where the Hamiltonian was run. Here's one of the houses on Parkway on the end here. There were 7 houses along Park Place, excuse me. And we were talking about what kind of car this was, this little car. I'm not a car expert, but some kind, yeah, I don't know what it is. It's not, I don't think it's a Model T. This is an aerial view of the track. This is Good Time Park in the background with the stables. The track is in the historic district. This is Orange Avenue down here. I included this just to show the crowd. And we don't nowadays realize how popular harness racing was and how all of these people fit into the village of Goshen is really amazing. Even pictures of the Hamiltonian at the mile track, the crowds were incredible. I'm surprised our sewage system could handle crowds like this. This is the original grandstands. This is the wooden grandstands that Mrs. Harriman had taken down and rebuilt. They're sitting on the roof of a barn, which is no longer there. These are people sitting on that. This was the stables over here. It's just amazing. And where did they all eat? You know, it's like it's amazing. This is a detail of the tea house that was in the infield of the track. I included just to show you. The tea house was created by Kate Sharks, and the idea was to encourage women to attend the races, which it became very successful, and the ladies started dressing up, and I love the hats. And then this little guy here posing. It's like, look, there's a camera, time to pose. And this is the tea house back here. And it was quite successful. And then here's a poster advertising the Hamiltonian in 1931. The Hamiltonian raced at the mile track from 31 to 1956. After Mr. Kane died, the race was moved to Illinois, and but Goshen became a tourist spot. And these are people going to the races, obviously decked out. This is Main Street. I just love how all the cars are backed in all the way down the street. They really got dressed up to go to the races. And this is Park Place. This is the Munchkin over here on the right. This is the Wisner Monument down there. We'll get to that in a minute. And St. James Church in the distance. This is the county building. It was first built in 1851 and then enlarged in 1887 and again in 1937 when the third floor was added. This is the second Battle of Minisink monument. Excuse me. The Battle of Minisink was in 1799. It's the site of the remains that were gathered at the battle site 2 or 3 decades after the actual battle. They were brought back to Goshen. The monument was installed in 1862, replacing a smaller one from the 1820s. It's outside here on your left as you exit the library. It was the original Battle of Minisink monument. The monument originally had 4 eagles. 2 of them were stolen in 1932, never recovered. And there's currently a fund established to restore the monument. This is the county clerk's office. the county clerk's office was incorporated into the county building. If you go down and stand by the Orange Blossoms Monument and look at that end of the building, you can see this door and these two windows are still there, and this little plaque is still there. And they just built the county building all around this building. And of course, somebody went inside and yelled, "There's a photographer outside." And they all ran outside and had a picture. This is East Main Street, which became Park Place, and you can see all the houses all the way down. And in 1911, when Mrs. Harriman was on her spending spree, she demolished what was originally the Washington Hotel. It became the Young Ladies Institute. And this is the site of the Goshen Inn today, which is Delancey's. And let's see. Supposedly in 1929 there was a fire in the Goshen Inn, and the building remained vacant until 1941, until the Nyhold brothers bought the building and turned it into a hotel. There's the hotel with two houses on each side. It was originally built for the Orange County Hunt Club, with Mrs. Harriman basically financing the construction. And we're going to switch over. This is Webster Avenue, which was at one time Greenwich Avenue, because it lines up with Greenwich Avenue. Recently reported to possibly be named Main Street. And
That's my house.
there's your house right there on the end there. We're not going to do all the houses simply for the sake of time. This is the Charles Jackson house. The property was owned by William Wickham and was the home of Charles Jackson in the 1800s until his death in 1876. And he was the postmaster in Goshen. And his descendants, Bessie Jackson, lived in the house until her death in 1984 at 94 years old. And this is the town hall. This is a detail of another photograph that I cropped. So it's a little blurry in the background there. This is the house today. And then this is what's proposed for the backyard at the last planning board meeting I attended. 12 apartments with 12 parking places. This is in the heart of the historic district. And then next door, this is the 1904 picture of the town hall. The proposed apartment building will be right here. This was, in 1822, the Farmers Hall Academy was formed and used this building as a school. This is where Noah Webster taught from 1782 to 1783, and at that time it was a two-room schoolhouse. In 1876, additions were added and the bell tower was added. It almost looks like a church, actually. And then in 1885, two rooms were added in the back. In 1911, the building was sold to the town of Goshen and used as a town hall ever since. And in 1992, there was a severe fire and it was restored and is still used as a town hall. And this is Noah Webster Historic Marker. This is a state historic marker commemorating Noah Webster being there. This is Dr. Noguchi's house. He was a founding doctor of the hospital on West Main Street. And he was born in 1867. He died in 1944 in Goshen. And he was married to Sarah Westcott Coleman. That's quite some Goshen family names there, in 1897. And he retired at 76 years of age in 1943, and he died a year later in 1944. He's buried in Slate Hill Cemetery. After him, Dr. Elias Young was there until 1986 when he died. And they both had their doctor's offices over here on the right. He went up these stairs over here on the right. Not in the front door. And then this was commonly known as the Divine Residence on Webster Avenue. It was originally owned by J.S. Edsel. Divines lived there for years, and his wife Rose, and they had a daughter, Gertrude, who lived on Parkway. This building is still there. Everything's still there. Oops, sorry. Everything's still there except the porch. This is James Scott Jr.'s carriage company. This is on the site of the Board of Elections building. It used to be the Department of Social Services building, which that's why this was demolished. I assume this is James Scott right there. What's amazing is his father had a building across the street, and it's amazing how many people they employed in these carriage shops. In this one, there's 2, 4, 6 people. I think in his father's there's like 9 in the photograph. But they built horse and sulkies, carriages, open carriages. Basically, it was a car dealership. And here's the site later. It became a Wyatt plumbing place, and the house was owned by J.C. Krantz in the 1800s, and both of the buildings were demolished in the 60s to make room for the Department of Social Services. This is right on the corner of Court Lane and Webster. This is Webster, and this is Court Lane. This is the Merriam House. This house was built in 1848. It was the home of Henry and Anne Merriam. He was born in 1802. His wife was a Goshen woman named Anne Eliza Reeves, and they married in 1833. She was the granddaughter of Benjamin Tustin, who was killed at the Battle of Minisink in 1779. He owned a timber and hardware business, and the house burned by a fire started by a neighbor on May 24th in 2007. And there's a big house there now. It's been replaced.
Wait, is this Van Orden house? This one here next to mine?
Yeah.
The Van Orden house for a while.
Wasn't the Starkeys live there?
Didn't Dunkelmans live there?
I'm sorry,
when it burned?
I'm sorry, yes, Dunkelmans, yes, Stanley Dunkelman.
Yeah, when the Dunkelmans owned it when it burned. And I've always,
Starkeys went in before that. Brinkley.
and well, that's what happened. A lot of these houses have, there's a lot of names.
Yeah.
A lot of these houses changed hands.
It was arson.
And I've always wondered what happened to that young man.
I can tell you after this.
I'd be interested to hear it. But anyway, he burnt the house down on them.
Under
And,
Dunkelman.
yeah.
What Starkeys lived there.
And Mrs. Brinkley lived here for a while. This is where she lived before she moved over to Phillips Place. This is the top of Webster Avenue. This is the Van Fleet House here on the left, known as the Van Fleet House, and this was the Coleman House. The Van Fleet House was owned by a John Smith in the 1800s. In the 20th century, it became the Van Fleet family. Well, end of the 1800s, it became the Van Fleets, and into the 20th century. And then the Coleman House was owned by Dr. Jane Crane and his wife Abigail. And Dr. Crane was born in Goshen in 1795. In 1825, he stopped practicing medicine and opened a store, which is not quite unusual. And I remember Mrs. Coleman out there sweeping the porch here. These houses are still there. This is the end of the historic district here, and then it goes across the street to the Bacon House. And the Bacon House was owned by the Howell family. And after the Pines burned, this is where, and her husband died, this is where Susan Randall Bacon lived. And one of the things about her is that she supposedly never had a photograph taken. She was very involved in the creation of the hospital, And I have yet to come across the photograph of her. If anybody ever comes across one, hold on to it. Let us know. And then this is, we're back down to the square. We're going to go up South Church Street. This is a detail of Jack McShane's store when it was Uranus's. Before that it was Horton's. It was a classical country store with counters up the sides, a potbelly stove in the back with a big Cracker Barrel next to it. It was great. A little stepping stone here. Definitely would have been in the historic district had it survived. All of these buildings are gone. This is, I included this just to show South Church Street when it was a residence. These townhouses. This is where the bank is now. This was a private residence that became the Eagle Hotel, which was demolished in 1939 for the movie theater. There's only 3 houses that survive: Donovan's funeral parlor, the McEwen house, and the house next to it. Interesting, by the way, this is Arthur Kyle. He was the coachman for the Murray family. He lived until 1956. He was a chauffeur who drove the horses, took care of the horses. And this is where the historic district starts on South Church Street. Everything before that is not. The bank and the house next door are not in the district. This was the Reeves house. Was built by Floyd and Christine Reeves. They owned a store on, a dry goods store, it was, I believe, on West Main Street, right about where Kent's parking lot is now for the gymnastics. The house was built by David Rowe. It's very similar to a house on West Street, the NC Sanford house. Excuse me, I'm losing my voice. And a brick house across from Salesian Park on Main Street. Built in 1876. It's still, the McEwens were descendants of the Reeves, still live there. And what's interesting about this house, it's zone central shopping. So if somebody comes along and wants to do something if the McEwen family no longer wants to live there and sell the house, this can become a restaurant, it can become office, it can become just about anything. Unfortunate zoning, I call that. And then this is Donovan's funeral parlor. This is where Dr. Dennis lived. And a man named Mr. Champion lived there in the 1800s. Funeral homes are permitted in residential districts in the village of Goshen. This is the Wisner Monument. This was in memory of Henry Wisner, who was a member of the First and Second Continental Congress. It was erected by his granddaughter, Frances Wisner Murray. She was the widow of Ambrose Spencer Murray, who was the bank president. The monument was, this one was dedicated in July in 1897, July 22nd. It's still there, a great monument. Henry Wisner was born in Florida, New York in 1720, and he died in Goshen in 1790. And he's buried in Walk Hill Cemetery up on the hill, if anybody's looking for him. There's a historic marker there by his grave. And this is the Post Thompson house. This was on the site. On this site was the Montague Hotel, which I found recently was supposedly painted yellow. And this was built by Nathaniel Minturn, who was involved in the track. The hotel was built around 1800, and it was also known as Hathaway's Hotel. If you look in the old Independent Republican newspapers, there's advertisements for, especially the Hathaway Hotel was well advertised. And this house was built by Captain Ellis A. Post, and the architect was Cornelius Ackerman. Great house. The Presbyterians bought it in 1923 for church activities, and it was demolished in the 1960s. And it's a vacant lot. It's it's right on the corner. St. James Church is right across the street. And then next door is the Kelsey House. This is an illustration of the Kelsey House before the addition was put on to the left side of the house. Here, there was an addition put on in 1890. The house was originally built, this portion was built around 1860. There it is today. New owners just fixed it up. And then jumping across the street, sorry, this is the home of Benjamin Edsel. He was president of the Goshen Savings Bank and mayor from 1860 to 1864. This house had a number of owners over the years, including the Holsteads, and that's when this photograph was taken, when the Holsteads owned the house. Conklins, the Rabideaus, Novaks, and Dr. Dinsmore is currently there. He doesn't make house calls, I don't believe, so don't go knocking on his door. But great picture of the house. And then across the street, this is the Charles Elliott house, and Dr. Elliott was president of the Goshen National Bank, and in recent times this was owned by the Sirigliano and Donovan family. Next door, this is, I call it the Cox House. This was built by Nathaniel Van Sickle, who owned the track that we discussed earlier, and he built a number of houses in the village. Alexander Wright sold the lot to Van Sickle in 1873. In 1898, the Tuthill family lived here, and they named the house the Anchorage. And there's the anchor on the front lawn. I don't know whatever happened to the anchor, but it's not there now. In 1906, they sold the house to the Kumar family, and then in 1910 to the Lawrence family, and finally in 1926 to Walter Cox, who was the trainer for William Kane. He came to Goshen with William Kane, and he was a horse trainer. This, and I have photos of the stables behind this house, were incredible. The barns are still there. I assume that the stables are like the photographs I've seen. Then the house, and Mr. Cox was famous for throwing Halloween parties for the kids in the village, and serving hot dogs, and very, very gracious. And then it became the home of the Lee family, and whose daughter was Grace Rosa Lee, Grace Lee Rosa, excuse me, and they lived there for years. And she opened the house to St. James Church, used to have their Christmas party, the Christmas fairs here before the parish hall was built on the church. And now the house is red. It's been painted red. And it overlooks the track. And then next door is the Alexander Wright house, which is attributed to Calvert Vaux and was built in 1853. Vaux was a well-known architect of his day, and supposedly this was copied from a book which shows his house styles. Great house. Has a solarium on the other side. This is the house that was Ackerman built, that was the Presbyterian manse. Also had a number of owners over the years. It's not even painted. I think this is natural shingles. But I think the shingles are still there, but they're painted now. This is on the corner of Parkway. It's over here. This is South Church Street. Here's a hitching post, which had it still been there, would be an element of the historic district. And then across, on the other corner, this is the Wallace House, built by Aaron Van Duzer for his daughter in 1853. His daughter Hannah married Harvey Wallace, and the house is still in the Wallace family. And then across the street, it's known as the Gott House. This was built by John Hurton in 1802. This is really old, this one. And he supposedly John Hurton won his money in the lottery. And then in 1826, it was bought by Isaac Van Duzer, who was a lawyer. And from 1826 to 2003, his descendants, the Gott family, lived here. And it's recently gone through a couple more owners. Great house. This is the Duryea house, which is right behind the Wallace house. And Henry Duryea was born in Goshen in 1847, and he died young at 59 in 1906. and he was a lawyer, a partner in the firm with Henry Bacon, the congressman. And then jumping down to Phillips Place, this is the Jason Corwin house, and Jason Wells Corwin and his wife Sarah Howell owned a hardware store in Goshen. And he came to Goshen in 1846, and he was mayor for 2 years, from 1873 to 1874, and had a number of owners over the years. The Conklins, the Brinkleys, the Ottoways lived here. The Adler family lives there now. And in 1968, this is where they filmed the movie Winter of the Witch with Hermione Gingold, George M. Cohan, and Burgess Meredith. Great house, too. This is in the National District. Then across the street, the district doesn't run all the way down Green Street. It only goes to this house. This is the Vale House. The Heritage Trail is down here at the base. And this is a side view of the house. And this was called Maple Shade. I wasn't able to find out much about C.W. Vale, but the Vale family was a large family in Goshen. Their farm was actually on Knoll Road, was the Vale House, and there was a cemetery there. But for some reason, suppose they took the Vales out of that cemetery and moved them to Slate Hill Cemetery. Whether they moved the bodies or not, I don't know, but the headstones are in Slate Hill Cemetery. And then up to South Street, this was the Lockwood House, and it's also had a number of day parties. Family lived here, and it's one of the 3 Greek Revival houses. Another one is on North Church Street on the right, the Sanford House, and then one up on Golden Hill Avenue. Probably all by the same architect and probably all built around the same time. The Greek Revival was from about 1830, and by 1860 it had pretty much gone out of fashion. Oops, sorry. A little heavy on the gas pedal here. This is the Greer House, George Greer House on South Street. This is where William H. Seward came to visit Goshen. He visited George. He was friends with the Greer family, George Greer. He later became governor and secretary of state under Lincoln. He bought Alaska for the United States, and reportedly documented that he didn't like Goshen. They wound up moving to Aurora, I believe, New York, where his wife was from, up by the Finger Lakes. And great house. And then further down, this was the George Miller and Ambrose Spencer Murray Jr. house on South Street. This is the end of the historic district on this side of South Street. The house next door where the paddock is was not included in the district. I don't know why. This is like South Street is a dirt road, which is great. Portions of this wall still exist. Here's the house today. Suffered a fire a number of years ago. Thank goodness it wasn't a total destruction. And then this is the Gargiulo house across the street, which was owned by Dr. Condit. He lived from 1852 to 1920. He was also involved in the first hospital on West Main Street, one of the 5 doctors. And this house has been in the Gargiulo family since the 1960s. And this is where the historic district ends. But if you keep going up South Street and go across the 17 overpass, on your right is the Brownner house on the right, which is on the National Register in itself, and across the street is the Wisner Coates house, which is also on the National Register. There are a lot of areas where the district can be expanded, and why they didn't go across the highway, maybe they thought the highway would make it not contiguous with the district. I don't know. But those 2 houses were added separately later on.
And when Steve and I had that done, and Judy and Ren across the street had it done, someone came down from SHPO, and we are officially referred to as historic pod.
I knew you weren't an intrusion, so. A pod, I knew they had language. So there might be a number of pods within the village. And then, and I think we're gonna be, and this is, a little bright picture. This is my great aunt here on the right, walking down South Church Street with her girlfriends. This is St. James Church on the left. And this was probably taken around 1900, I guess. And she was a very interesting lady. She worked for the Stewart family on 17 and traveled the world and was supposedly in the San Francisco earthquake in 1906. And her attic was filled with steamer trunks. Some of them quite ornate, velvet-lined steamer trunks. They traveled to Bar Harbor a lot. That's where they summered, and to Palm Beach in Florida. She went to Europe with the family. Nice job if you can get it. And that's it. Yes.
You didn't mention the Stevenson house on South Street, but isn't that the old?
That was it.
Oh,
That was the Greer house.
the Greer, okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that the oldest house in Goshen?
No,
It's not.
no. The oldest house in Goshen is up at the end of Sarah Mills Trail, across the street.
Okay.
It was an inn. The oldest one left. Yeah. Goshen had a number of stone houses, especially on 17 going to Florida, that didn't survive. Where the red brick house is, there's offices there now going on. That was the Sayre house. But there was a stone house on that site. There were stone houses further out by the industrial park, and none of them survived. Goshen's lost more than we have. I did a talk a couple years ago on Goshen Gone, and it took 2 sessions to do everything that was lost. It's like amazing. You know? That's why the historic district, this is all they've got. It's not like we're Williamsburg, or not even Williamsburg, or Savannah, or Charleston. Newburgh's historic district is huge. We don't have anywhere else to go, really. I mean, we could probably incorporate the rest of Main Street and maybe try and do Murray Avenue. But it's not that there's an overabundance of houses. Anything else? Yes?
Just a quick one about the government center.
Mm-hmm.
I think that they were considering doing a large Georgian brick building, and the cost was a little bit more than Rudolph's plan.
I never
And
read that.
maybe that would have kept that property in the historic district if they had done it with brick.
It probably would have been an intrusion or a pod. I don't know. I have a letter from the state saying that it's eliminated from the district, but they don't give a reason why. And they did. I probably didn't quit. Don Clark probably didn't push it because he was very anxious to get the district accepted. I mean, that was Goshen was one of the first villages to get a district accepted. It's really an honor. I mean, it was not easy back then. There were a lot of people against historic preservation in the early 70s that were left over. I had doors slammed in my face when I was trying to question people about their houses. You know? And people fought it long after that even. Yes?
Maybe just talk a little bit about what the benefits are of expanding the historic district?
Well, it's a recognition for the community. I don't think Goshen really takes full advantage of promoting it. Some communities, you know, we don't even have a sign up entering the village saying we have a historic district. There was no indication of a historic district until the marker was put up in the park. And even that was controversial, putting that up. You know, I had to get that approved. You know, and people, you know, people should be proud that they're living in a house that survived so long. You know.
Are there funds made available for keeping things up?
You can apply for grants, yeah. The only thing that being in a historic district really protects you from is if there's a government project, then it has to have a second layer of review. It's basically up to the municipality to promote and enforce the historic district. I was told that the most popular thing to prevent demolition is public opinion. That is what mostly stops demolition of old buildings.
Ed, I want to thank you for over the years you have kept everyone informed and
Oh, thank you.
about
I enjoy it. What I enjoy are getting the emails and the phone calls from people. Sometimes it's very interesting. And I am working on another Goshen book. It's coming very slowly, but it's my retirement project. So hopefully I'll live long enough. Yes.
Just a quick thing.
Sure.
You mentioned somebody was bottling mineral water.
Yeah,
Where
they're
did that water come from?
probably a well on their property, and they probably carbonated it and bottled it. There are all kinds of like elixirs and things that were made. Like Barney Frank had his Mountain Dew, and Mr. Minchin had his whiskey. There were stills probably in the backyard all over the place. Goshen had a lot of bars, and a lot of outlets for alcohol consumption. So, anything else? Thank you all for coming. It's been great.
Thank you, Ed.